The bustling airport terminal was alive with the hum of travelers rushing to their gates. Suitcases clattered across tiled floors. Children giggled as they chased each other through crowded walkways, and announcements echoed over the intercom in a symphony of organized chaos. Gate 23 buzzed with anticipation as passengers queued up for boarding on Flight 745, destined for Miami. Among them stood an elderly black man named Mr. Walter Thompson, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, his silver hair neatly combed back. His bearing exuded quiet dignity, but no one around him seemed to notice. He blended seamlessly into the sea of faces. As airline staff called out group numbers, passengers shuffled forward, clutching boarding passes tightly. Some chatted animatedly about vacation plans. Others stared blankly at their phones, eager to escape the monotony of travel day. A young flight attendant named Emily stood near the jet bridge entrance, clipboard in hand, her crisp uniform pressed to perfection. She greeted each passenger with practiced politeness, scanning tickets and offering polite smiles that never quite reached her eyes. When it came time for Mr. Thompson's group to board, he approached calmly, presenting his ticket without hesitation. However, something about him caught Emily's attention, not because of who he was, but rather how he carried himself. Perhaps it was the subtle confidence in his gait or the way he held his head high despite his age. Whatever it was, it triggered an unspoken bias within her, a flicker of discomfort she couldn't quite place. As she scanned his boarding pass, her tone shifted ever so slightly from warm professionalism to clipped efficiency. "Boarding confirmed," she said tersely, handing back the slip of paper. Her smile faltered just enough to go unnoticed by most, but not by Mr. Thompson, whose keen gaze registered every nuance. He nodded graciously before stepping onto the jet bridge, unaware that this seemingly routine interaction would soon spiral into something far more complicated and revealing. As Mr. Thompson made his way down the narrow aisle, he scanned the rows until he found his assigned seat, 12, a window seat near the front of the economy class section. Smiling faintly, he stowed his leather briefcase in the overhead compartment and settled into the cramped space. The plane was already filling up, and the chatter of passengers mingled with the soft whir of air conditioning. A few minutes later, another passenger approached row 12, visibly irritated. It was a middle-aged man in a business suit, holding a crumpled boarding pass. "Excuse me," he said sharply, addressing Mr. Thompson. "I believe this is my seat." Mr. Thompson glanced at the man's ticket and then back at his own before replying calmly. "I'm sorry, but this appears to be my seat according to my boarding pass." The man scoffed, shaking his head. "That can't be right. I booked this seat weeks ago. Economy Plus doesn't come cheap, you know." Before Mr. Thompson could respond, the commotion drew the attention of Emily, who hurried over. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice tinged with impatience. "This gentleman is sitting in my seat," the man insisted, pointing accusingly at Mr. Thompson. Emily glanced at both boarding passes, frowning. "Sir," she addressed Mr. Thompson, "this is indeed his seat. Could you please move to your correct one?" Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, his expression calm but firm. "I've double-checked my boarding pass. This is my seat. If there's been an error, perhaps it's on your end." The tension escalated as the man grew louder, complaining about customer service and demanding resolution. Other passengers began to take notice, some craning their necks to see what was happening. Sensing the growing disruption, Emily's demeanor hardened. "Sir," she said sternly, turning to Mr. Thompson, "if you don't comply, I'll have no choice but to ask you to leave the aircraft." Her words hung in the air, sharp and dismissive. For a moment, Mr. Thompson simply looked at her, his piercing gaze conveying disappointment more than anger. Then, slowly, he stood up, collected his belongings, and stepped into the aisle. "I'll step off," he said quietly, his tone measured but laced with quiet authority. "But let me assure you, this isn't over." Passengers exchanged uneasy glances as Emily escorted him toward the exit. No one spoke, but the atmosphere had shifted, charged with discomfort and unresolved tension. Little did anyone realize, least of all Emily, that the consequences of this decision were about to reverberate far beyond the confines of the airplane cabin. The plane sat idling on the tarmac, its engines humming softly as Emily returned to her post near the cockpit, trying to shake off the lingering unease from the confrontation. Passengers chatted amongst themselves, speculating about the elderly man's abrupt removal. Some expressed sympathy, while others muttered under their breath about delays caused by difficult people. Just as the captain announced final preparations for departure, a sudden commotion erupted near the gate. A tall, sharply dressed woman strode briskly down the jet bridge, flanked by two uniformed security officers. Her presence commanded immediate attention. Her confident stride and authoritative demeanor silenced the murmurs aboard the plane. It was clear she meant business. "Excuse me," she announced loudly, standing at the entrance of the cabin. "May I have everyone's attention? There has been a grave misunderstanding involving one of our passengers." Heads turned in unison, curiosity piqued. Emily froze mid-step, her clipboard forgotten in her hands. The woman continued, her voice steady but carrying an edge of urgency. "The gentleman who was removed from this flight moments ago is none other than Mr. Walter Thompson, the founder and CEO of Skylink Airlines, the very company operating this flight." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Whispers broke out like wildfire as passengers processed the revelation. Emily felt her stomach drop, her face flushing crimson as the weight of her earlier actions crashed down upon her. She hadn't just ejected any passenger. She had dismissed the owner of the airline itself. The executive paused, letting the gravity of the situation sink in before continuing. "Mr. Thompson has personally requested that we address this incident immediately. He will reboard shortly, and I assure you all that appropriate measures are being taken to rectify this unacceptable behavior." She turned her gaze directly to Emily, who now stood frozen like a deer caught in headlights. "In the meantime, I expect every member of this crew to reflect deeply on the values of respect and professionalism that define Skylink Airlines. We do not tolerate discrimination or negligence under any circumstances." With that, the woman signaled to the security officers, who stepped aside to allow Mr. Thompson to re-enter the plane. He walked with quiet poise, his expression unreadable as he resumed his seat in row 12A. Silence enveloped the cabin once again, thick with embarrassment and disbelief. Emily's mind raced, grappling with the enormity of what had transpired and the inevitable fallout awaiting her. As the plane finally ascended into the sky, the cabin remained eerily silent. Passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances, some pretending to focus intently on their books or devices, while others whispered behind cupped hands. Emily, still reeling from the earlier events, struggled to maintain her composure. Her usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by a mask of anxiety, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the hem of her uniform jacket. Approximately 20 minutes into the flight, the intercom crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen," came Mr. Thompson's deep, resonant voice. "This is Walter Thompson speaking. First, let me extend my sincerest apologies for the disruption earlier today. What occurred should never have happened. Not on my airline, nor anywhere else." His tone was calm but firm, commanding attention without raising his voice. "While I understand that mistakes can happen, such incidents reflect poorly not only on individuals, but also on the organization as a whole. That is why I have decided to address this matter personally. To ensure accountability, I am implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all staff members, starting immediately upon our return. Additionally, those directly involved will face further review." Emily clenched her fists discreetly, feeling the weight of his words press down on her. She knew the spotlight was squarely on her actions, or lack thereof, and the implications were undeniable. After concluding his announcement, Mr. Thompson rang the call button above his seat. When Emily hesitated before approaching, beads of sweat forming on her forehead, he gestured for her to sit beside him. His expression softened slightly, though it retained an air of quiet authority. "Miss," he began, his voice low but deliberate, I could sense her discomfort during our earlier encounter. Tell me, what drove your decision? Caught off guard, Emily stammered. I thought I was following protocol. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Mr. Thompson nodded thoughtfully, leaning back in his seat. Protocol is important, yes, but so is empathy. You saw conflict and chose sides too quickly, without fully understanding the situation. That's where things went wrong. He paused, studying her reaction. You're young, and I believe you have potential. But leadership requires more than just enforcing rules. It demands fairness, patience, and the ability to see beyond surface-level assumptions. Do you understand? Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as shame and regret washed over her. Yes, sir, she whispered hoarsely. I'm truly sorry. Mr. Thompson offered a small, reassuring smile. Good. Now, let's work together to make sure something like this never happens again. By the time the plane touched down in Miami, the atmosphere aboard Flight 745 had transformed significantly. Passengers disembarked with thoughtful expressions, many nodding respectfully as they passed Mr. Thompson. Word of his composed handling of the situation spread quickly through the terminal, earning him murmurs of admiration. For Emily, however, the journey wasn't over yet. As the last passenger exited the plane, Mr. Thompson motioned for her to join him near the front of the cabin. Standing beside him was the same executive who had earlier addressed the passengers, an imposing figure named Ms. Laura Bennett, Skylink's chief operations officer. Together, they outlined concrete steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. Starting next week, Ms. Bennett announced, all employees will undergo comprehensive diversity and inclusion training. This isn't optional, it's essential. We must foster an environment where every passenger feels valued and respected, regardless of race, age, or background. Turning to Emily, she added, and as part of your personal development plan, you'll be working closely with HR to refine your interpersonal skills. Your role as a flight attendant is critical. You represent Skylink every time you interact with our customers. Emily nodded earnestly, determination replacing her earlier apprehension. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to grow, she said sincerely. I promise I won't let you down. Mr. Thompson placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Mistakes are how we learn. Mississippi used this experience to become better, not just at your job, but as a person. With renewed resolve, Emily watched as Mr. Thompson stepped off the plane, his presence leaving an indelible mark on everyone involved. Though challenges lay ahead, one truth was undeniable. Accountability and growth start with acknowledging our flaws and committing to change.